This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Thank you for listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, where we discuss all of the news in the world of sports. My name is Ben.
And I'm Anthony.
And this is it for 2016, our debut year at the podcast network. I mean, it's gone by really quickly. I know you're still kind of new. You've been here a few months
Kind of,
now.
yeah. I've been here about 4 months, yeah.
So it's gone by pretty quickly. But
Yeah.
it's for me, who started in May.
Right.
I mean, we're 133 episodes in now. I can remember episode 1.
Yeah.
So it's gone by pretty quickly. This is going to be our last show, so we will end the show with kind of a year in review really, really quickly. But first, we have to talk a lot of football. This is probably the biggest football weekend of the entire year, and it always happens right at the end, which is fantastic. Got to talk about the NFL. Really not too many big games on the schedule. A lot of playoff teams still kind of just wrapped up, except for maybe some seeding wise.
Right.
Big showdown in the NFC North. It's a Sunday night matchup. The Packers and Lions will be playing for the division title. The loser of this game still has a good shot to get in, but Washington is also lurking. They will be playing the Giants, who probably will not be resting a whole lot of their players. Tampa Bay Buccaneers still have a really, really outside shot. They'll be playing the Carolina Panthers, so Carolina could possibly be playing that spoiler role. Tampa Bay have to win and get a ton of help to even have a chance. But we'll talk first. Now it's the never-ending saga of Tony Romo, of Dak Prescott, Jerry Jones, whatever you want to call it, the Cowboys quarterback situation. A couple of days ago, it's reported, okay, Romo's not even going to be active.
Yeah.
Mark Sanchez will be the backup to Dak Prescott. Now the tides have turned. Reports are that Tony Romo will be seeing an undetermined amount of playing time on Sunday against the Philadelphia Eagles. What do we think? Maybe a quarter? Even that? Maybe like half a quarter?
Something like that. So he's going to see time, so that doesn't mean that he's going to start. So
Dak Prescott is going to be the starter.
Yeah, so he's still named the starter. So basically, if they get out to call it like a 14-0 lead at the end of the first quarter, they're just going to be like, okay, cool. Dak, you said. Zeke, you said. Smith, the left tackle, you said. Like, basically, they're going to start doing that and then bring in Tony Romo, which might actually be a detriment to him because if you're having all the backups help you out, then that could, get him hurt again. But I'm just going to do some reckless speculation and assume that Jerry Jones just wanted to see Tony Romo out on the field and just was like, I want to see him play. I don't care what everybody else said. He's going to play, and now he's playing.
I think there's probably some truth to that. We talked about it the other day, just really briefly. You thought that Romo should not play. I said you should get him out there. Worst case scenario, Dak Prescott gets injured. You have to have your backup, which in this case is Romo, at least a little bit ready. He hasn't really played. Well, this will be his first game since Thanksgiving last year. But even then, he got injured during that game. So he hasn't played a significant amount of time in almost 2 years now. So I don't know how healthy he is. I don't know how rusty he is. We're not there at practice. We're not seeing what he's doing. So I said you should give him at least a little bit of time. But you know what this kind of puts in my mind? It's almost as if Tony Romo is the starting quarterback to this team, and they're trying to protect him and not Dak Prescott. It's like, okay, Dak, you're going to play like a half. You'll be fine. We don't want to rush you too much. We have the bye week next week. We don't want to give you the whole week off so you're not playing for 3 weeks.
Right.
So we'll give sort of Tony more protection. That's almost what we're going with. And now because Romo is so fragile, if you sneeze on the guy, he might get injured. So you almost have to keep your starting offensive line in the game now. Tyron Smith will not be playing. He has a knee injury, so they're going to rest him. He'll probably be ready for the first playoff game against whoever it will be.
Right.
But it's almost like you have to keep the rest of your offensive line in the game to protect Romo because one hit and he might not get back up.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Like like even like I said, if you start him or not start him, if you play him and he has a bad offensive line, because the one they have is the best in the NFL, but if you have the backups in, then you give him a better shot of getting hurt. And I get them wanting to at least get something out of Romo, maybe not necessarily in the sense of like coddling him or like trying to like make him always feel important or whatever, but just in the sense of like, okay, let's just say worst case scenario, something does happen to Dak Prescott, right? Let's say in this game or in the division round or something like that, he, maybe not blows out his knee, but just has something where he has to come on, for the rest of the game. And it's hard to just kind of just like drop Tony Romo, out of what, like almost a year and a couple months. Like just like, all right, Romo, here, have fun. Like, get some reps under him. Like I get that part of it. It's just the fact that we've covered it now from the sense of, will he play this whole year? And then he hasn't. And then it's like, he's not going to play. And now he is going to play. Like there's so much built up, will Romo be good? Will he be bad? Will he be this or that? But now we've kind of just made it a whole thing of, if he stinks, why'd you bring him in? If he plays really well, okay, now we're going to talk about should he be the starter, because that's what we do with media stuff. We just like to like inflame things. And if he gets hurt, then we're going to yell at the Cowboys. And if Dak gets hurt, well, why didn't you put in Romo sooner? Like we're pretty much set up to yell at somebody no matter what happens on Sunday.
I think it's really just a matter of Jerry Jones wants to give him a bone, give him a little bit of something, and I think it's a good idea. I really do. I think you need to get him ready in case Dak were to get injured. I think you need to showcase Romo briefly, to show teams that he can still throw the ball and play,
right?
Because you're trying to trade him before the start of next season. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a good idea. But anyways, we'll move on. Some of the games now. There's no bigger game this weekend than the Green Bay Packers going into Ford Field to take on the Detroit Lions. The winner will win the NFC North and host a playoff game next week. The loser still has a shot to get in, but they would need some help because the Washington Redskins, with a win, they'll be in a pretty good spot. It'll be 9-6-1. They will have that half-game edge over the loser in this game in that aspect. So, really, it's kind of a win and you're in. Lose, you need a lot of help. For me, Green Bay's been hot. They've won 5 in a row now. They're 9-6. Aaron Rodgers, in particular, has been lighting it up. He leads the NFL in touchdowns now with 36, only 7 interceptions. Jordy Nelson has really found his stride. He's approaching 1,200 yards, already 14 touchdowns, which is tops in the NFL for receivers. Detroit's kind of been decent all year, but they've been kind of struggling lately. Lost to the Giants, lost pretty bad to Dallas on Monday night. I really don't see how Green Bay loses this game.
Yeah, from everything that's happening, it's looking like Green Bay is kind of that Green Bay that we saw when they won the Super Bowl, right? Not exactly the best team in the NFL, but the best team at the right time kind of thing. And if you look at it, Aaron Rodgers has been, Aaron Rodgers over the last 5 weeks, like I said, they've won 5 in a row, and in that time, 11 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. And even the game before that, in the loss, he had 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. So, 14-0 in his last 6 games. He's basically been everything you'd hope for him to be coming into this year. And with Jordy Nelson, he kind of started off the year a little slow. You didn't know, but, since basically Tennessee on November 13th, he's been the same guy. He's had 4 games with 100 yards plus receiving, and one of those other games was 91. So he's basically been that kind of safety net, if you want to call it that, for Aaron Rodgers, because last year when he didn't have him, he was throwing to Randall Cobb and everybody else to try and make things happen. Now he at least has his friend back that he can, at least rely on, and if all breaks down, they've been together for a handful of years and they know what to do. And with the Lions, they're 9-6 as well, but all of their wins and losses have all been really tightly bound together. Like outside of last week's game against the Cowboys and maybe against the Giants 17-6, everything else has been like 20-17, 16-13, 26-19, 22-16, 20-13, 20-17, 31-28, 24-23, 17-14. Like they've all been really jumbled together, and they've just been, lucky and have won a lot more of them than they lost.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to Detroit's secondary. Their secondary is kind of banged up. In particular, Darius Slay. He did miss their game last week against Dallas with a hamstring injury. If he's healthy, he's going to be matched up against Jordy Nelson, who's absolutely on fire, having another fantastic year. I think a lot of the game plan as well comes down to, is Slay and some of the rest of these defensive backs for Detroit going to be healthy? If not, that Aaron Rodgers is just going to be licking his chops even more. Without Darius Slay, one of the top cornerbacks in the league in my eyes, without him there, your top target, Jordy Nelson. Randall Cobb is still questionable with an ankle injury, so whether he'll go or not. But they still have a ton of weapons. Devontae Adams. You have Ty Montgomery at the running back position now, who's a great pass catcher. Obviously, he was a wide receiver, so he can do a lot of things in the passing game as well. Check down, screen passes. Jared Cook's a big physical tight end who's healthy and is adding another dimension to this team, especially in the red zone with his height. So, and in the defense, just playing a lot better. When the Packers hold teams under 30 points this year, they've only lost one game. The problem has been that for a long time, their secondary, and particular Clay Matthews, was so injured, they were giving up 35, 40 points every game, and their offense wasn't clicking on all cylinders like they are now.
Right.
So they were losing so many games, which led to them being 4-6 at one point. So I really don't think... I think the only edge Detroit has here is that they're at home. Other than that, I don't really give them much of an edge because they're just not coming in hot nor healthy right now, which is the opposite of what Green Bay's doing. They're coming in healthier than they've ever been, and they're hotter than they've ever been. 5 wins in a row. Aaron Rodgers is back to being Aaron Rodgers. Matthew Stafford's been decent all year. I think he'll keep it close, but I think Green Bay's going to win this comfortably. I really do. I just don't see how Detroit can win.
Yeah, I'm with you because, maybe the running game situation is exactly fixed with Ty Montgomery. He's had some good games. He's had some bad games, but he at least gives them someone that they can rely on now that it's not at least Eddie Lacy right now. And like you talked about with the Lions, you've lost 2 straight by a decent amount. You got blown out by the Cowboys, and, you never were that close with the Giants when you played them. And they are just hanging on for, that playoff life right now. And like I said, the Packers, Aaron Rodgers, just, he's leading the league in touchdowns. That game against Minnesota is maybe a mirage because we've had that whole controversy about maybe the secondary basically didn't care what the coaches were saying. But even with all that said, he was the best player out there last week, and he doesn't look like he is going to lose anytime soon.
Definitely not. A couple of other games really quickly that have some brief playoff implications. Mm-hmm. The Oakland Raiders will be looking to clinch the AFC West and the number 2 overall seed in the AFC with a win on the road against Denver. Denver really struggling. Looks like they're going to be turning to Paxton Lynch on Sunday since they are eliminated from the playoffs. Give the young rookie some more playing time. He's obviously their quarterback of the future. Although Trevor Siemian has not been terrible this year, he hasn't really been stand out. So they're going to be turning to Paxton Lynch. Obviously, the Raiders' Matt McGloin will be under center since Derek Carr is out with the broken leg. And then the Kansas City Chiefs will be on the road to take on the San Diego Superchargers. If the Chiefs win, the Raiders lose, they will have the number 2 overall seed and the AFC West crown. Who do we think is the AFC West champion come Monday morning?
I want to say the Raiders just because it's a backup quarterback, but Matt McGloin has to face Von Miller, and that's really difficult and really hard to do because Von Miller is still probably the best defensive player in the game now that J.J. Watt has been hurt this year. And the Chargers are, a good enough team, but the Chiefs, they've been defying expectations all year. Basically, Tyreek Hill has been destroying people on kickoff returns, little slant passes, bubble routes. He just basically runs for 80 yards. And Alex Smith basically just keeps winning. Like, he may not do it like Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees style with a bunch of yards, but he keeps winning all the time. And I got to think it's the Chiefs that are going to be the division winner at the end of all this.
I'm going to agree with you. I think the Chiefs will win pretty easily against the Chargers. I think the Chargers are facing a 5-11 season. We'll be firing Mike McCoy Monday morning. The Raiders are having to face Denver on the road.
Right.
Tough defense. You mentioned Von Miller, but also Aqib Talib and Chris Harris, who is probably the best cornerback duo in the NFL, as well as Bradley Roby, TJ Ward at the safety position, Matt McGloin, a backup QB. And not to mention this Raiders team, we'll have to see how they kind of respond to not having their leader. How emotionally ready are they going to be to play this game? Are they going to be still down in the dumps? Are they going to be mentally and physically prepared for this game against a tough Denver defense who's still going to be trying to play as hard as they can, although they're not going to be able to defend their crown in the playoffs? So I'll give the edge to Denver, and I think the Chiefs will win pretty handily over the Chargers. Have a lot more to play for. Just riding high right now. I really do think they're the second best team in the AFC behind New England. So I'll give the edge to the Chiefs as well. We'll take our first break at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. After the break, we'll stick with football, but we'll be talking some college football. We do have the Orange Bowl tonight between Florida State and Michigan, as well as tomorrow the national semifinal games, Washington and Alabama, as well as Ohio State and Clemson. So we'll preview those right after the break at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching.
Hey!
The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back into the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Last night, a couple of pretty interesting bowl games. Virginia Tech scores 35 unanswered points to turn around a 24-0 deficit to top Arkansas 35-24 in the Belk Bowl. Virginia Tech, number 22 in the nation, they'll obviously be going up with their victory. And then not a good day for the Pac-12 yesterday. Colorado gets destroyed by Oklahoma State 38-8. They were down 31-0 at one point. They didn't even score until the fourth quarter. So the Buffalo, who had a great season, finished at 10-4, were number 10 and were 10 in the nation before last night. Really end the game on a really, really bad night. We have Michigan and Florida State tonight in the Orange Bowl. But first, story about the Belk Bowl. Yesterday, obviously, Arkansas against Virginia Tech. Arkansas were up 24-0, lose 35-24. Big comeback for Virginia Tech there. But the story is about a certain player for Arkansas. Tight end Jeremy Sprinkle did not play in the game last night. So you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, probably had a little nagging injury. Number 7 ranked tight end, according to Scouts Inc. on ESPN. Maybe he's thinking about the draft, although number 7 tight end's not necessarily really prolific. But none of those are the reasons he did not play last night. Last night was the Belk Bowl.
Yep.
Belk being a department store. We don't have any here, so we kind of had to look up what exactly it is. So picture like a Macy's, JCPenney's department store where you find clothes, shoes, luggage, appliances, bedding, whatever. So just a general department store. Sprinkle did not play in the game last night because he was suspended, of all things, for shoplifting. And where did he shoplift? But at a Belk department store prior to the game yesterday. So the players this week, for participating in the Belk Bowl, were each given $450 gift cards to spend at the store, which you talked about that not being an NCAA violation.
Right.
I feel like that, I'm surprising it is too, because if you're given literally anything, a piece of candy, you're in trouble for doing something. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of surprised that's the case. But anyways, you're given a $450 gift card to spend there. You have 90 minutes, like a little shopping spree. So what does Sprinkle do? But he takes more things than his $450 gift card would allow him to, about $260 more, and attempts to steal it. Some shirts, some socks, a couple of wallets. I don't know why you'd need 2 wallets.
Because at that point, why not?
But like, how stupid can this kid be? Like,
I love this story so much, and don't get me wrong, don't steal, kids. It's very bad. Do not steal. Bad. You're going to go to jail. It's bad. Now, as long as we're clear with all of that, this story is just so... It's just funny to me at a certain level, because you have something where you were given $450, right? Like, you were literally like, here, like, have this gift card, basically, go nuts, buy whatever you want. And he basically decided, okay, cool. Also, these wallets, these socks, all the stuff like that, this is all mine too. Like, I don't know what happened. Like, I don't know what possessed him to do that. Like, part of me wants to give him the benefit of the doubt that he didn't know. Maybe he just like kept loading stuff into the bag and took it home, and he was like, oh man, I took too many things. Well, I'm not going back. But it's just like, I'm trying to think of the irony of something else. Like, if you were to do something and it's just like you got in trouble for doing that. Like, it's something like if you, I don't know, I can't even think about it. Like, if you had a day where, like, if you're a senior or whatever, like if there's like senior cut days or whatever else like that. Like, if you basically did that on the day that wasn't the senior ditch day, and you just basically left the day before and then got suspended for senior ditch day and the rest of the year. Like, you had a chance to do this, but you messed up and did it on a different day. Like, it's just one of those, like, funny, ironic things.
And you're already given something. $450, that's a lot of money. Like,
right.
Picture spending $450 at, like, JCPenney's, Macy's, whatever. You can get a lot of nice things.
Yeah.
It's like you're given something. Something is better than nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why are you going to jeopardize doing something so stupid like that. It just
And we talked about like with the
makes no
NCAA, like
sense.
I swear I heard somebody say one time that like the differentiation, whatever that word, the way it was basically determined with the NCAA was like you could give somebody a bagel because that was a snack, but if you gave them a bagel with cream cheese, that's a meal, that's a violation. So they have like these really strange rules, but apparently $450 if you make it to this bowl is okay, which I'm all in favor of. It's just really strange, and this story is just so ironic and weird, and it's just funny to me at a certain level.
Yeah, I didn't even know that they do this. I know that times they'll give you like a T-shirt or a hat, maybe
Right.
even a backpack for
Sure.
participating in a certain bowl. But a gift card, $450 is not bad. But
And also, like, how many people are on a college roster? Like 90, 100 people? Like, it's not like it's like 20 people. Like, there's a lot of people on a college football roster, and you do it for both teams. That's a lot of money.
you know, Belga's going all out. I mean, I never even heard of them prior to this, but I mean, probably it's big on the East Coast.
Right.
This game was in North Carolina, so I don't know. But anyways, tonight, the Capital One Orange Bowl, number 11, Florida State from the ACC against number 6, Michigan from the Big Ten. Michigan is a 7-point favorite. Jim Harbaugh always has his teams ready. They've had a while to prepare now. Their last game coming November 26th in that overtime loss to Ohio State 30-27. I'll give the edge to Michigan. I think their defense will be able to contain Dalvin Cook, who's really the focal point of the Florida State rushing attack. Over 1,600 yards rushing, is also the career rushing leader at Florida State. Pretty prolific college there, so kudos to Dalvin Cook. He's going to be a top, probably a first-round pick if he enters the draft, which he probably will. But so I think Michigan will be able to contain Dalvin Cook, who's going to be the focal point of the Florida State offense, put more pressure on DeAndre Francois to try and throw the ball. He's been okay this year, but not really stand out. 18 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. I think Michigan will be conservative, try and keep the game low scoring. Two good, solid defenses with a ton of NFL prospects on them. I'll give the edge to Michigan. I'll say something along the lines of maybe 23-14, 23-17.
Yeah, no, I can see something like that. Like you talked about Jim Harbaugh, and he's slowly getting a little bit better. Every year he's been in Michigan. If he wins this game, it's one more win. And if you look at the defense that they have going right now, Michigan's one of the better teams defensively, at least if you look as far as passing-wise, they're very elite in that level, and also as far as on the rushing defense, they're top 35, but that's better than what Florida State is. And you look at how Michigan's been playing outside of what they blundered with, I guess, if you could say that, against Iowa, and then the loss to Ohio State. They were one of the best teams in the nation this year, and you take something like that and if you're Jim Harbaugh, you win this game, you slowly get a little bit better, and then next year you got a chance to finally beat Ohio State and kind of get that national championship opportunity, or at least make it to the college playoff. Yeah, you talk about how good Dalvin Cook is. Him and Leonard Fournette / Christian McCaffrey are probably like the top 3 running backs that are going to enter the draft, and oddly, he's the only one that's actually playing, but he also made it to the highest bowl of any of them. He made it to one of the bigger ones, like the Orange Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, the Rose Bowl, stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how he does against a elite defense in Michigan. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Michigan gets the win, and Harbaugh gets a little bit better every year.
A few of the other bowl games tonight. The AutoZone Liberty Bowl will feature Georgia against TCU. The Hyundai Sunday Bowl will feature Christian McCaffrey-less, number 18, Stanford against North Carolina. The Franklin American Mortgage Music City Bowl, great name there. The number 21 Tennessee Volunteers will battle Nebraska. And then the Nova Home Loans Arizona Bowl against Air Force and South Alabama. South Alabama, great to see them in a bowl game at 6-6. But I mean, for me, there's just too many bowl games. We're at 40 bowl games.
Yeah.
You have to have 2 teams each. So that's 80 teams in a bowl game. That's 63% of the teams in all of football are going to be in a bowl game. I know it's about money and sponsorships, but I mean, half of these games are on during the day-to-day. People may not even be off from work. I mean, game start as early as 9 o'clock, so hour and a half from now, Pacific time. People may not even be off work. Who can really travel to go to these games except for maybe alumni? So,
Right.
Well, I'm just not a fan of it. I would like 10 bowl games, like the 10 biggest bowl games.
Right. Well, but to be fair, those are the only ones that we actually care about, because like you can Google Boca Bowl, that happened this year, and see the 55 people that are in the stands. But we only really care about, obviously, the 2 semifinal games, and then the championship game, and then also things like the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, maybe the Sun Bowl, something like that. We care about, like you said, basically about 10 bowls, and everything else, the Meineke Car Care Bowl. It's like, all right, cool, fantastic, good for you, Meineke, but like no one cares about that game and no one's going to watch it unless someone famous, if like Fournette was going to play or something like that. I don't think that's the bowl he was playing in. But if it was someone like Fournette or McCaffrey or Dalvin Cook or Jameis when he was playing, someone like that, to be in there, that's the only time that we actually care about the bowls.
Yeah, I mean, the bowl for LSU is the Buffalo Wild Wings Citrus Bowl. That'll be against LSU. Or LSU will be battling Louisville. That's right. Tomorrow. Could be an interesting game. Lamar Jackson on a standalone sort of moment against LSU, a top defense. So we'll see how the Heisman Trophy winner does. But now we'll preview the national semifinal games really quickly before the break. Number 4 Washington against number 1 Alabama in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Alabama is a 13.5-point favorite. The question to me is can Washington cover the spread? I don't see any way they can win the game personally. I mean, a good solid team. Jake Browning's been really good. John Ross is a top receiver. Myles Gaskin a good running back. But for me, Washington's just too young, too inexperienced. I think they're a year away from really being back here again and really competing to even get in the national championship game. This Alabama defense has been historically good. The offense is just kind of conservative under Lane Kiffin. I don't think they'll have much distractions with him going to coach somewhere else next year. I really don't see how Alabama loses this game. I just don't.
Yeah, it's like 13.5 looks like a lot, but then you also realize that Nick Saban has had a month to basically prepare for Washington, and if you give him that much time, he's pretty much the best coach in the history of the college football's ever seen, and you give him a month to prepare for not a mobile quarterback, because that was the thing. If he had to prepare for like a Lamar Jackson or somebody like that, then you might give it a little bit of a closer edge. But since Jake Browning is basically a pocket quarterback, he's somebody he's been a Heisman Trophy candidate all year basically, but he doesn't necessarily move out of the pocket. And if that's the little space that you're going to give Saban's going to figure out how to exploit that. I see the game probably is close at halftime. I'm going to say close. I mean like 17-3, 17-6 kind of thing like that. And then you look up in the middle of the third quarter and all of a sudden if it's like 31-10, and you're like, oh, okay, this is over.
You give Nick Saban practically a month to prepare for anyone, and I give him the edge in that regard. Jake Browning's been decent, as you mentioned, but that one game against USC where he was forced to really be under pressure, it seemed like the pressure really got to him and the rest of the Huskies team. Chris Peterson's a good coach, and he's really doing a great job of rebuilding this program here, but I think they're just running into the wrong team at the wrong time in Alabama, and I really don't see how they have a chance. I mean, Jalen Hurts, he's not necessarily the greatest quarterback, but he's really mobile. He kind of gives Alabama a dimension with the running he can do, which they've never really had. You think about the quarterbacks they've had recently, A.J. McCarron, Greg McElroy, whoever they have. They're just not mobile guys.
Right.
Jalen Hurts, a lot different, can really be a mobile guy, add a dimension with escapability. I just don't see it, man. Like, things happen. Don't get me wrong, this is why we play the games. But I think Alabama will be moving on to the national championship game. Since
the whole thing has started, which isn't very long, obviously, but the only time recently that Alabama's looked not Alabama-ian is when they lost to Ohio State, but that was also Urban Meyer, who might be the second best coach in college football in the last 20 or 30 years. And also, a small thing, Lane Kiffin, my boy, he got left behind with the team bus with Alabama. Like, he was doing a press conference, talking to the media. Team bus left. He's still with Alabama, which I actually kind of like. He didn't go to FAU just yet. He's still with Alabama to try and win another national championship. Talking to the media, this is the third time that the team bus has left him. So they had to take a ride with the officials for, the Peach Bowl officials.
I think they're just kind of trolling him since he's leaving them soon. Like, last couple games we're just going to haze you a little bit. I think that's what we got going on here. But the other national semifinal game, the number 3 Ohio State Buckeyes will battle the number 2 Clemson Tigers in the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl out in Arizona. I really like Ohio State in this game. Clemson, to me, they're getting healthier. Deshaun Watson does have his top target in Mike Williams, who will be back over 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns. We saw what Deshaun Watson almost did to Alabama last year, kind of carried them to almost topping the Crimson Tide. But for me, they haven't really been the same team this year. They've been kind of sluggish. They haven't really looked dominant in a lot of their big standout games. Kind of struggled to get by Louisville. The one home loss to Pittsburgh, who is a decent team. We now know they were a lot better than what they looked like when they lost to them. So I will give Ohio State the edge. I think Urban Meyer's, you mentioned he's a really good coach. I think he's the second best coach in college football behind Nick Saban. Dabo Swinney's a great coach as well. He's really done a good job of rebuilding Clemson. He's kind of like one of those guys you'd love to play for. Really a sort of emotional, like to do everything he can for the kids and everything. But I'll give the edge to Ohio State. I think this could be, honestly, a shootout. I think we're looking at both teams scoring in the 30s. I think both teams are going to really duke it out. Almost like a situation where the guy who has the ball last is going to win. I'll give the edge to Ohio State. I think they can make just one more play than Clemson. I think this is by far the better game of the day.
Yeah, this game looks like it'll probably be the closer of the two just because, I mean, even though we're in Northern California and we're, biasly rooting, I guess you could say, for Jake Browning because he was playing literally like 20 minutes away from where we're at right now. You look at that and you got to be objective. It's like, okay, Alabama's probably going to win this. But with the Ohio State and Clemson game, I mean, I understand that Deshaun Watson is probably the best player on both sides with Ohio State and Clemson. But then you add in the fact of, okay, Urban Meyer is probably, like I said, second best coach, and he has 3 national championships and he's the second best coach. And you look at Ohio State as a team this entire year, they've had, start off the year, they did really well, beating teams, like Rutgers, even though it's Rutgers 58-0. You're beating 62-3 against Nebraska. You're beating Maryland 62-3 as well. Like, you had a couple of blowouts, and the only time you really messed up was against Penn State, and that was only by 3 points. They've had one of the best seasons, even though they weren't the winner of the division of their conference, which, that all takes into like division or conference losses and everything else like that. But they've been one of the best, teams this entire season. And I'm with you. Like, I just think Ohio State basically just makes a couple more plays. They win by, like 4 points on one of those. Like, they're down 3. They drive in late. They're up by 4. Clemson has to have a touchdown to win the game, and they just, don't convert on 4th down. Ohio State makes it to the national championship game where now you basically have Urban Meyer against Nick Saban for a national championship.
We'll have to see on Monday. We'll obviously be back in the studio, or at least I will be. Unfortunately, Anthony, you won't be. But sort of recapping these games as well as previewing some of the other games like the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, USC and Penn State in the Rose Bowl should be a good matchup. And then you have Oklahoma and Auburn in the Sugar Bowl. Should be equally as good of a matchup. So we'll have to find out on Monday just to see exactly what happens. But I'm with you, buddy. I think Ohio State, and I do think Alabama will be playing in the national championship a week from Monday. So we'll have to wait and see. But anyways, we'll take our last break of the show, our last break of 2016. After the break, we'll preview UFC 207, Nunes versus Rousey tonight, as well as a year in review of 2016, what we thought was the top story, maybe some of the top memorable moments, and then people we obviously are going to be leaving 2016 without. So we'll be right back after the break, guys, at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
UFC 207 tonight, live from Las Vegas, the T-Mobile Arena, the brand new arena out there in Vegas where the Las Vegas Golden Knights will be playing hockey next year. But tonight it will be hosting UFC 207, Nunes versus Rousey, the headline match. Ronda Rousey's first match since getting knocked out by Holly Holm last November. Her first match since then, she's been kind of going through, I don't know what you want to call it, a state of turmoil, almost committing suicide, talking about it, filming stuff, not fighting, talking about retiring, kind of taking like a hiatus from MMA. Well, she is back, and she'll be fighting for the title against champion Amanda Nunes in the women's bantamweight division, the 135-pound division. We also have another title fight, another bantamweight battle. The champion in the men's side, Dominic Cruz, will be battling number 5, Cody Garbrandt, for the title. And then you have kind of a number 1 contenders battle, TJ Dillashaw against John Lineker in the bantamweight division as well. So the winner of that will probably be taking on the winner of Cruz versus Garbrandt. But we first have to talk about Ronda Rousey back in the Octagon against the champion, the Lioness Amanda Nunes. She wore like a lion's
mask,
like Halloween mask sort of thing at the weigh-in. She kind of looked kind of scary, and then she takes it off. Rousey looked like she was in great physical shape, really looked cut, really looked kind of ready for this fight, which has been kind of my one question mark going into tonight is since she has not fought in over a year now, she has not really had the right mindset of fighting for at least the last half year until up and coming to this fight, is how physically and emotionally ready is she for this fight? And for me, I still don't know. That's why I'm going to take Nunes in the fight tonight. Nunes, a woman who likes to brawl, really like to strike. That's what really destroyed Rousey in the whole Holly Holm fight was that she just outboxed her and knocked her out. Nunes can do a lot of the same things that Holly Holm can, so I'll give the edge to Amanda Nunes.
So you talked about Ronda Rousey, and she had that kind of aura, not aura maybe because she doesn't have that as much, but she had that look of basically where it looks like she hates everybody. Like she always had that when she came, when she did her weigh-in or whatever, she always had that look that she was just like pissed off at the world, and she had that again with this whole thing. And you talked about her mindset or whatever you want to call it, because for a while, like she went on like Ellen and she went on a couple of other things and basically talked about maybe she doesn't come back, maybe she does this, maybe does that, because that knockout from Holly Holm legitimately got to her. That's something that like stuck in her brain for a while and didn't know what she was going to do. So now she's coming back straight to the title fight, which I get it,
I have a problem with that. It's like you haven't fought in over a year. You're contemplating retirement, which is not good for the brand and the sport itself. And then you're going to get thrown right into the wolves again for a championship fight. You're not going to have to work your way up. I don't like that. I think, don't get me wrong, I know why the UFC is doing it. It's all about selling pay-per-views and publicity. I mean, why do you think CM Punk was on a pay-per-view fight, his first ever fight in MMA, period, not even in the UFC?
Right.
So I get it. I know why they're putting her at the headliner, and it makes sense. But she's fighting for the title, hasn't fought in over a year, and she got destroyed, her first ever loss in MMA, and knocked out really quickly in her last fight. I get it, but I don't think it's really fair.
Well, yeah, never forget that UFC is a business, and whether it's Ronda Rousey, whether, like you said, CM Punk, who that one's probably the most egregious of all of them, because it's basically just like you took a guy who's super famous and you had him in the pay-per-view and he got his, bleep handed to him. Even with Conor McGregor, who has been winning his fights, he always gets top billing, and he basically is starting to be able to basically call his shots with everything that he wants to do. And with Rousey, the thing with Rousey is like, if it wasn't such a long layoff, I don't think people would have cared as much, because I think if she would have just lost and then call it like 5 months later, 6 months later, once you have that whole, because she legitimately got knocked out, and you have to have that whole kind of 6 month grace period of just like, okay, just you're not fighting, you're not doing anything, we need to like basically save you from yourself thing. And if that's how it happened like 6 months later, then I don't think anybody would have cared if she basically would have gotten a title fight again. It's the amount of time that was in between the whole thing, which is over a year, and we didn't know if she was coming back. That kind of is what rubs people the wrong way. But at the same time, if she goes out there and armbars Nunes in the first minute of the fight, then all of a sudden we're going to be right back to loving Rousey again, and we don't care the fact that she got a title fight right off the bat. And it is a weird thing with her, because she was so dominant, and she was somebody who, even though the fights were only going a minute and a half at best, every time you bought UFC or went somewhere to watch it and she was on, she was always the one that got top billing. She was always the one that didn't matter if you knew the people in the second to the last fight or whatever. Like, she was always the one that, like, everybody, Manfield, whoever, they always wanted to watch her. But if she goes out there today and, let's say she gets submitted from a rear naked choke, which is what Nunes has done a few times, then all of a sudden the shine of Ronda Rousey is now probably officially off the apple, because the last 2 times we've seen her, she's got, destroyed, getting basically super kicked out of the ring. And with this one, if she loses again, then all of a sudden it's just like, okay, so Rousey's done, and then we probably stop caring about it.
I think this is a huge fight for Ronda and the UFC in particular. You mentioned it. I feel like if she has another terrible loss like she did against Holly Holm, I think she's done. She's already talking about it. She's already said on Ellen that this is one of her last fights. Right. So she's already, retirement's already on her mind. If she gets destroyed again, I think that's it for her. I think she's really done. So I think this is a big fight for her. If she goes out and wins convincingly, whether it be a decision, a submission, which she does 75% of the time in her 13 career fights. So whether she goes out and taps someone out, knocks her out, a decision, which she's never done, but anything could happen.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think this is a huge fight to her to really tell how long we're going to be seeing Ronda Rousey in the Octagon still. It'll really determine a lot. And then the other 2 matches, Cruz and Garbrandt, and then Dillashaw and Lineker, The winner's probably going to be facing each other. Dominic Cruz has been absolutely spectacular, 22-1 throughout his professional career. And then Cody Garbrandt is undefeated at 10-0, but I will give the edge to Dominic Cruz, a guy who really just kind of wears you down. Looks like to me it'll probably go all 5 rounds. He wins the majority of his fights by a decision. Garbrandt wants to really brawl. He's a really strong physical puncher. I don't see this fight going to the ground. I really think it'll be a stand-up fight, which is a lot more entertaining for most people than just a clinch battle. So I have to see how that goes. But anyways, we need to end the show. But first, we cannot do that without talking about 2016. This is our last show of the year.
Right.
To you, what is the top story
Cubs.
of the year? It has to be the Cubs, right?
Cubs.
Has to be. 108 years they have not won the World Series, and then they go and do it in Game 7 on the road. Extra innings, a rain delay. I mean, everything was just... It's almost like that was like a scripted movie.
Yeah, like it's... You can talk about the Cavaliers getting the ring, LeBron, coming back from down 3-1. You can talk about... with the NFL, you can talk about Deflategate because that was absolutely something that was lingering for a long time. You can talk about Rousey coming back now. You can talk about Tiger Woods maybe starting to come back. I'm trying to think of like other sports off the top of my head right now. You can talk about Serena Williams still being pretty dominant in what she does. You can talk about all these things. The Cubs, they were, a game away from same old Cubs, and Game 7 coming back, winning a World Series. The whole city of Chicago, I think it was something like 5 million people were over in the parade. Just a ridiculous amount of people that were there to watch it because you, your parents, your grandparents, and your great-grandparents are basically waiting their entire lives just to basically watch the Cubs win, and you finally got to see it in 2016.
That parade literally broke American attendance records for a gathering.
Yeah.
Literally world records for a gathering in all of the United States.
Yep.
That ceremony for the Cubs literally broke that record. It has to be the Cubs. And then, I mean, even so, the Cavs and Warriors, like you mentioned, the Warriors blow a 3-1 series lead after they overcame a 3-1 series lead against the Thunder.
Right.
So kind of the irony there in the aspect. So I think you got to give it to them, too. I mean, I don't know. I think those are probably the two biggest stories. And I don't know how 2017 can really top that. Like the Cubs overcoming everything. LeBron James winning the title for Cleveland for the first time since, I think, 1954. So, I mean, I don't know how next year can really overcome that, but we'll have to wait and see. Unfortunately, this year we did lose a lot of great athletes and personalities. I mean, Buddy Ryan, Craig Sager most recently, Denny Green, a coach for a long time in the NFL, Muhammad Ali, Arnold Palmer, legendary golfer. I mean, a lot of unfortunate. Pat Summitt died. I mean,
Jose Fernandez, the young pitcher from Miami.
Right, a lot of unfortunate deaths this year, so kind of one last moment to remember them. I mean, a lot goes out there, and hopefully we don't have so many in 2017. Even just recently, not just sports, but in general, we had a lot of deaths. I mean, George Michael died on Christmas. Then you have
Princess Leia
dying, her mom dying. So, I mean, it's just not a good thing. It seems like all these things happen in threes, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and that's like the most unfortunate. I'm just sort of scrolling through a list here. We have Kimbo Slice, legendary YouTube fighter, did a little bit of MMA.
Mm-hmm.
Gordie Howe, one of the greatest hockey players of all time, unfortunately died. I mean, it's definitely unfortunate, but it is a part of life. I mean, there's only 2 guarantees in life, and it's death and taxes. So it is unfortunate that it happens, but it has to happen eventually. So, like, real quick, to end the show, our thoughts and prayers goes out to all their families still, if they're still sort of dealing with everything. And obviously, 2016 will be not a memorable year for these people that did die in their families, but it has to happen, unfortunately. So that's going to conclude our show for today, though. We are going to end on a happy note. We would like to wish you all a happy new year this weekend. Make sure you be safe. Don't do anything stupid. You don't want to be arrested or do anything to jeopardize your holiday upcoming. A lot of great football games this weekend, as well as Monday. I know Anthony and myself will be ready. UFC tonight. Hope you're ready for that as well. So anyways, guys, my name is Ben.
And I'm Anthony.
And this is us signing off for the last time in 2016. Thank you for making it a successful year, and we have huge things planned for 2017, so we hope you'll be a part of that as well. I'd like to thank you guys for listening. Have a good weekend. We will see you on Monday. Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.